welcome to the room. We'll get started here in just 1 or 2 minutes for the screen name, Waldo.
Great.
Teresa, one other thing I didn't mention, if I reference something and ask to put a link to it in the chat, it would just be the climate action plan. And so, in fact, I'll just put a link in now, but people won't be able to see it. So if you could just, if I reference it, if you could just copy it back in. Oops. Oh, we're down to 3.
Oh. Okay then.
Hi, Jane. Welcome to the Climate Action Room. We're just going to wait till a couple of more folks join us, and then we'll get started.
Thank you. Good plan. This is quite a process.
Yes.
I Zoom all the time, but this is multi-layered, so that's good. I'm learning something.
Yes, we're all learning little, tidbits and things, so that's nice.
They're more than tidbits. More than tidbits.
Well, Jane, just in the spirit of hearing from you, if you have any, we're going to give a little overview, just a reminder that this is being recorded, and some overview of ways folks can leave comments in case there's a lot of people. But since it's just you, I guess just would ask, do you have any questions, or would you like to leave any comments for us?
The comments for the climate action plan?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll jump in there and say, yay, team. I'm really impressed with the city's forward thinking and kind of leading the curve, the leadership, and setting a really great example for other cities who are paying attention. I'm very impressed. I've lived in the county, but outside of city limits for like, I forgot, 50 plus years. But I moved into the city 10 months ago, right in time for the virus. And I'm really glad to be a resident of this city, which is setting such a good example. And I'm trying to cooperate and share information, and yay team.
All right, great, thanks.
We've got a pretty good number here.
Yeah, great, thanks Jane, and happy to get started here. So just real quick, I'm Chris Reed. I'm our city sustainability manager. Maybe just the other 2 city staff want to introduce themselves real quick.
Sure, I'm Teresa McClish. I'm Special Project Manager for the City and Community Development.
Thank you. And my name is Kelly Mattis, and I'm the Administrative Analyst for the Utilities Department. So hello, everyone.
Great. Thanks. So before we get started here, just want to remind everyone that this session will be recorded. You'll notice that your video is off and that you're on mute. Feel free to turn on your video, especially if you expect to be talking, but if you just want everyone to see your face, feel free to turn that on. So there's really 2 ways that we want to use this room tonight. One, if you just want to leave a comment, feedback, you want something to get put down on paper, go ahead and use the chat box to record that. Think of it like we're in a real meeting and there's a nice pad of paper next to me, and that's just something you can write down an idea. Or alternately, you can raise your virtual hand, which will put you in the queue. And that's really your option to ask a question or to engage in some more complicated conversation. So in an effort to hear from everyone, if you're asking a question, please make sure it is a question. If you want to leave a comment, again, put that in the chat box. But please try to keep that brief just so everyone has a chance to talk. Again, feel free to use the chat box for comments, but also if you have any just logistical questions or you're not sure where the raise hand function is or other things like that, go ahead and use that chat box to ask for help. You can leave this room at any time. So if you've made your comment and you want to go comment somewhere else, go ahead and do that. If you're done with your question, you want to go somewhere else, go ahead and do that. Please do be sure, though, that you rejoin the main Zoom session at 8:15 sharp. I'm going to leave this up in Spanish in case folks are more comfortable with that language. But with that, just wanted to give a quick overview of where we've been in the last couple of years. So last 2 years, we did have climate action as a major city goal. And in completing that work program, we adopted our climate action plan. We also adopted the Clean Energy Choice Program for new buildings and had our first year receiving clean electricity from Central Coast Community Energy. So it's been a big year for climate action for us. But adopting a plan isn't the finish line, it's really the starting line. And now we have to go out and do the work. So we're really excited to think about what that looks like in the next couple of years and moving forward. So I'll stop there. And Teresa or Kelly, did I miss anything, or is there anything else that needs to be said before we get started here?
No, I think you covered it. Just to remind everybody, if you want to post something in the chat, just think of that as the same way that we've done this in the past with the whiteboard or the note board where you go up and write your comment. That's essentially the chat is taking place of that. So just keep that in mind.
All right, so if you have any questions, go ahead and raise your virtual hand. Any questions?
Any questions? Let's see.
Or comments?
Or comments?
Anybody? Oh, yep, let's see, Don Maruska has raised his hand, so I asked to unmute him.
First of all, it's outstanding that you've made so much progress in this area in the city. So kudos to all of you that are working on this. And I've been part of the Slow Climate Coalition and helping to move those forward. I'm curious, what you see and how the city is viewing the opportunities to leverage multiple objectives like climate action when you're thinking about economic development. So for example, in moving out the $3.4 million of economic development, which is a pretty big chunk. Was there any thought given, or do you see any opportunities to provide incentives or special recognition or a little extra to those businesses that are doing something that might be especially distinctive in advancing the climate goals that the city has?
Thanks, Don. Thanks for that great question. So I'll answer in sort of two parts. The first, specifically with the small business grants, I think really focused on just keeping businesses solvent. Folks are really hurting right now. So I think that the focus really there is just getting money out into the people that need it. That said, multiple objectives absolutely are core to climate action. When we think about what is climate action, I think some people might think, oh, it's solar panels or it's electric cars. But to us, affordable and accessible housing is climate action. Conservation and access to open space is climate action, and certainly economic development is climate action. I think we actually were at the same meeting at the Economic Vitality Corporation. We're thinking about how a green economy can really deliver the kind of head of household jobs we've been pursuing and really future-proof our local economy. And so when we think about what a work program looks like to advance climate action, all those multiple objectives are certainly top of mind, and would really love your expertise and other folks' feedback on how we can do that in a more meaningfully and effective way.
Thank you. And we've got another question from Jane Swanson. I'll ask to unmute her.
There
Jane.
you go. You can
There
hear
you
me
go.
now? Thank
Yes.
you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
So last year before the COVID problem, when there were public meetings, I went to several public meetings about proposals for all electric future buildings, not past buildings, including information about heat pumps and batteries for electrical storage in homes. And I thought it was really fascinating, but I'm a failure in communicating that information to other people. So I'm a little bit confused. Like, I'm not sure if the city presented that or somebody else or climate action, whatever. Anyway, I'd love to know if those presentations that were sterling, they were so impressive with the knowledge base and the clarity. I'd love to be able to find those online and share them.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Jane, for that. A good question. Yeah, just so everyone's aware, when I talked about the Clean Energy Choice Program for new buildings earlier, that really is a change to our local building code, so that now that we have access to clean electricity, if we can run our homes and businesses on that clean electricity, they become sort of operationally carbon neutral. And so, we amended our local building code to make sure that all electric new buildings are incentivized. So that's in place. We've already received dozens of building permits for all electric new buildings. So that's really exciting. The presentation you were speaking about likely was our all electric building expo that was put on by the Climate Coalition with support from the city of SLO. And I'm actually not sure if that was recorded or not, but I'm making a note right now, Jane. I'll reach out to their leadership and see if that was archived. And if so, I'll put my email address in the box. If you just want to reach out, I'll see if I can share it back with you.
Thank you.
And Chris, I'm just going to add quickly, I just put a link in the chat, and it's our Clean Energy Choice Program as it has been adopted, and it has some information about that implementation and little video.
Great, thanks.
I'm not seeing any other hands, so.
Oh, we have a raised hand here.
Okay.
For Janine. I'm asking you to unmute, Janine. If it pops up, you should get a message. There you go.
Right. With the pandemic, and right as we were focusing on becoming zero waste in the city, then the pandemic hit. And it seemed like a lot of the restaurants that we were buying from switched to plastics because I don't know, it might have seemed more safe or more whatever, maybe easier. So last night we got takeout again from a local restaurant. I think it's Taco Time. It's a wonderful restaurant, but 3 PS5 boxes that go straight to landfill. And with the problem of the pandemic, and plastics have probably skyrocketed with all the PPE, that restaurants who I would think would look to finding all cheaper cardboard, recyclable or compostable products that don't cost, I'm sure this one box probably costs 75 cents, goes straight to landfill. It is not recyclable. 100% is not recyclable because businesses aren't buying this kind of plastic. That we can be, our city can be more proactive in saying, we're going to call a zero waste policy on this kind of thing. When there are wonderful alternatives. There are many restaurants in other cities that are using bamboo sporks. Malibu created that 3, 4, 5 years ago. That we should also do that. And the pandemic aside, let's get that going.
Great, thanks, Janine. And I know that there's been, again, before the pandemic, there was good conversations with Downtown Association. Is that okay? Is that working? Okay, with Downtown Association and others on having zero waste events. And I think broadly, my understanding is that everyone's interested in getting back to pre-pandemic levels and then moving forward from there. And so any suggestions, if you want to leave them in the chat box on specific things that we can do to make sure that we're pursuing an effective zero waste platform would be appreciated. Also, just note that the state passed extremely ambitious and aggressive solid waste. It's actually based around methane legislation. I think it was last year, SB 1383, that's going to really require us to be innovative and move forward aggressively on landfill waste diversion, particularly organic solids. So we'll look to see what happens there. If you have any specific suggestions, either put that in the inbox there, or again, I'm just going to keep posting my email address every so often there. If folks want to follow up with specific, be to take those as well. One thing I did want to share while folks decide if they're on the fence or not about raising their hand or want to have more conversation. When we did adopt our climate action plan this summer, and I'll ask Teresa to put a link to our website that has the climate action plan. Some strategic plans at the city and a lot of climate action plans will just have like, here's 100 good ideas, or here's some things we think might work. But we really focused on the 25 or so foundational actions that we really need to achieve in the next 3 years or so. And so that means as we think about a 2-year funding priority, we already have council direction on what the next couple of years look like. So I'd really encourage folks to take a look. Fortunately, they're flexible enough that we still have room for great ideas, and we have room to understand the best avenue to implement and to prioritize and all of that. But certainly would encourage, if folks are interested, to go ahead and take a look at that. If you only have 5 minutes, take a look at volume 1 that has stories from the future. It's a fun exercise we did at the community where we actually did some storytelling and story writing from the year 2035. And if you want to really dig in, volume 2 is what you're looking for. All right, any other questions? Mr. Cooper. Oh, sorry, we'll let you unmute yourself here in a second. Sorry,
I'd just like to make a point about our limited resources. I know we're headed into maybe a prolonged drought. A lot of people are wishful thinkers and say this will not happen, but I think we are. And I think we need to look at worst case scenarios regarding our limited water capacity. Worst case scenarios are not being addressed, I believe, because everyone's saying, well, we'll find a way to get additional water through, desalination plants or whatever, or harvesting dew in the morning or whatever it is. But I actually think that we need to work with worst case scenarios, because I actually do believe we're headed into prolonged droughts, and climate change is something that will not give us the ability to come up with miraculous solutions for creating more water. I mean, you could bring icebergs from the Arctic if you wish, but I think that all of that is wishful thinking. And I'm a little worried about the city's lack of concern with delineating these worst case scenarios.
Great. Thank you for that feedback, Alan. And just for comments, we are recording all this, so all of this is public record. If this is something you'd like us to physically record in writing, if you want to just maybe add a short summary of that in the comments section. And then Teresa, maybe you can touch a little bit, we were talking mostly about greenhouse gas emissions reductions, but we're also actively working on resilience and adaptation to climate change impacts. And so Teresa, do you want to talk a little bit about that effort?
Sure, and that is tied to your comments, certainly by our initiative. It's called Resilience Flow, and it's our effort that's afoot right now to develop resiliency and ability to thrive for the community in light of the worsening effects of climate change. So we are indeed looking at these things to develop not only our hazard and vulnerability assessments, but this information will inform and help us update our safety element of our general plan So it's a different way to look at these potential effects, including prolonged drought, wildfire, changing and storms, storm frequency and flooding, all of these things. And so there's certainly another opportunity for you to engage in that effort.
Thanks, Teresa. And Alan, I just put a link to that project page down there as well. Also note that Kelly just put a link to our SLO community forum. So just a reminder, if you want to visit another breakout group, that's your opportunity to do so. And one more reminder that there will be more opportunities to participate via Open City Hall, which will be more information about that after this item. Jane, I don't know if you just haven't put your hand down yet, but do you have another question?
Yeah, it's really simple.
Okay, great.
I was trying to save the chat, but I can't do that. Do I need to ask you to enable me to do that, or should I not try to save the chat and do something else to remember all this great conversation?
That's a good question.
I do know I could say that the chat will be saved and published through Open City Hall as part of this outcome. And other than that, I don't know, Kelly, if you have any other ideas other than copying and pasting little bits and pieces. Kelly, you're muted.
Oh, you're muted, Kelly.
Just to echo what Teresa said, Jane, I do know that it'll be recorded, but I don't know when it will be made available. So we'd have to follow up on that.
Okay, thank you. I'll check out Open City Hall. I guess that's what the answer was.
Yes.
Okay, that's just fine. That's fine. I'm just learning new technologies every day. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Jane.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jane. All right, I definitely am going back and looking through comments. I saw some good ones. It seems like there's a lot of interest in active transportation and using that as a means for climate action. As I said earlier in response, we see climate action is electric vehicles, it is renewable energy, but it's not just that, it's also active transportation, it's accessibility and affordability. We think diversity, equity, and inclusion and climate action are closely integrated. So all of these are great comments. I saw there are some comments around there around equity and justice and climate as being integrated. That's really at the heart of our climate action plan. So just kind of summarizing here. And if anyone has any questions or any clarification or suggestions, happy to have it, or just want to have a conversation on the topic, we're here for it. Go ahead, Alan. Can you unmute Alan?
I don't mean to dominate this, but when there's a question of personalized transportation, I am very concerned that the city is going full bore ahead on the premise that we will not have personalized transportation, that everyone will be either going through public transit or bicycles or walking or something else. And I actually believe that personalized transportation is more important now than ever in a pandemic world. But it's also important because it assists people who are over a certain age, such as mine. So I actually think that there should not be this ramrod approach toward eliminating personalized transportation. I think there will be a day when not only will electrical cars be carbon neutral, but they will be carbon neutral because of the way they're manufactured. I know that that's a big issue, but it will happen eventually. And I think if we can address that as a possible alternative to transportation, we are going to be looking into the future more realistically and perhaps more humanistically.
Right, thanks for that, Alan. And I just want to share with everyone, right now in our general plan, which is the sort of blueprint and green print for our community long term, we have an adopted policy that says, we want 50% of our trips in our community to eventually come from walking, biking, and busing. The other 50% will still be from sort of in vehicles. And then further, that's just for sort of intercity trips. And so that's not even accounting for the regional trips. So when we're thinking about our climate action plan, like, to get to that 50%, it is still a big shift in how we treat our streets, how we think about transportation. But certainly folks in vehicles is a major part of our future. Just, I think the overall vision in our general plan, our climate action plan, is that it's just substantially less. So I think as we move forward, we still see electric vehicles playing a really important role for what inevitably will be many vehicles still on the road over time. Also just hopeful that those vehicles and pedestrians and cyclists can exist in a safer way as well. So
we also have a raised hand by Garrett, and Garrett, I'll send you the message to unmute. Did you get that?
Yep.
You got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just kind of want to build off of what Chris was saying. The goal isn't necessarily to tell everybody that they have to bike or walk, but it's really to give that opportunity to everybody and to make our transportation system more equitable. We've had a century of building our streets around cars, such that people primarily, if they want to get around safely, they have to get into a car. And so it's about transferring that balance to allow people to feel safe when they're on a bike or to feel safe walking through town. So it's about rebalancing our streets for different priorities. Our neighborhoods should allow for kids to be able to play out in the street safely and not have to worry about a car running over them, because that's how I used to use our street. We used to play hockey, roller hockey in the street. And I would love for that to come back to our neighborhoods and really recapture this valuable public space such that it's not just solely dedicated to storing and moving vehicles. There's definitely a ton of benefits, whether that's climate action, whether we're talking about equity, or whether we are just figuring out ways to make sure that our children are healthy and moving around our city on their own energy and their own muscle to make sure that they're not becoming obese and just really giving them the tools to be able to navigate our cities even when they're at a young age.
Great, thanks, Garrett. Well taken. And what's actually kind of exciting as well is that for all of us that still want to take electric vehicles, I think Alan pointed to the fact that there are industrial manufacturing processes that are coming down in greenhouse gas emissions intensity, and as our electricity becomes cleaner, that's good. But also we're actually seeing that all those batteries on wheels are ways to actually manage our grid and make our grid healthier. So there's definitely an exciting confluence of, I think we can kind of have it all in this case, or hopefully we can. So, all right. Any other questions or thoughts on other topics?
Not seeing anything yet. Oh, Alan. Okay. Oh, it's you moved. Hold on, Alan.
Just one more, and I actually am most concerned about this, and that is that I realize that the city is working within a general plan which will limit the population at 2035 to a certain number. We're really not sure what it's going to be. It could be 60,000, it could be 70,000. But they're trying to keep growth monitored and controlled. My concern is that with the climate action plan, there is no mention whatsoever of the unsustainability of growing the population in San Luis Obispo. Every area within this, on this planet has a certain holding capacity that can sustain a certain number of humans and other kinds of life forms. And I believe that we're just simply not addressing that holding capacity.
Thank you, Alan, for that.
Sure.
Don't see any other questions yet. Oh, hold on. I think you're muted.
Yes, I am. I was just,
There you go. You got it. Sorry, I was looking over here at the admitting. Sorry about that.
It's okay. The short answer, Alan, was thank you for thank you for that. And it's something, yeah, I appreciate it. We have a couple of new folks. Welcome, Marshall, and welcome some others. Again, as you were brought into the room, your video was turned off. So if you want to join us video, that's great. If not, that's fine too. And if you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hands and we'll be happy to take those. And if you just want to leave some comments for us to record and archive, please go ahead and put that in the chat box.
Thanks, Chris.
If nobody else is going to speak, since we are on a population explosion, there's like probably what 5,000 new homes being built right now in San Luis Obispo. That means $1 million new water bottles being sold, plastic cutlery, all these plastic dishes being taken out with no stopping of that. And is there any hope that we could actually get city council to say, even in this pandemic, to say, we're going to ask our restaurants and our water bottle users to stop using, you know, the 8 ounce. I saw a mom carry out 2 cases of 8 ounce, those little 8 ounce things of water bottles out of the grocery store, that those would be stopped. Those are going, the state says under 10% are going to landfill. They're all going to landfill. That this is, for me, unconscionable. Pandemic or not, we have got to stop that. And we can sensitize our citizens. We can't work on the county. We can at least work on city.
Yeah, thanks, Janine. And yeah, that has not been in our work program since the straws and the bottles at city facilities issue. But certainly if that's a priority and a suggestion you'd like to raise to council as part of the next 2-year work program, it's something we'd be happy to entertain.
Thanks, Janine.
All right, Lee or Jesse or Marshall or anyone else have any questions or comments?
We've got a few more coming in here.
Oh, great. This is remarkably similar to how this happens in person.
Is it?
It really is.
This is the first time I'm doing this, everyone, so I'm curious too. That's good. Good to hear.
Although I feel like, we're standing by the door, letting folks in one at a time.
Yes, that's the difference. That's the difference.
Well, that's true.
You can't say bye. Right. Looks like there's a question in the chat box there. Lee asks, does the city have any authority to control diesel vehicles, pickup trucks accessibility? Oops, sorry, I read that wrong. Especially giant pickup trucks that erode neighborhood livability with noise and gross emissions. That's a really interesting question, Leah. I know that there are certain capabilities that local governments have for controlling sort of truck routes and the like, but I'm not sure honestly what's on our books. I don't know if Teresa, you happen to know offhand. But I can tell you this, while I, instead of putting you on the spot, I'll give you a second to think about it. I can tell you this, that we medium and heavy duty vehicles are being phased out through state regulation. It's actually pretty incredible what's sort of coming down the pipeline for new vehicles and especially heavy duty diesel vehicles. And so that might be the kind of thing that technology would fix before regulation, but I'm not sure. I don't know, Teresa, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, only through some conditions we put on projects for construction, short-term impacts related to construction, and those are geared toward air quality emissions and noise in certain times of day. So it doesn't go too early or too late at night and on weekends and so forth. So those are the 2 ways we regulate that. But there's obviously a lot more to that. And some streets are constructed, and beefier than others. And then we try to keep trucks onto those streets.
Great, thanks. And welcome folks that are new to the room. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your virtual hand. I see one up. And then if you have any comments, please do feel free to put those into the chat box.
Okay, I sent Marshall the ask to unmute.
Yes, hello.
Thank you. There you are. Hi, Marshall.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Well, I want to thank everyone for having this community forum. And my name is Marshall. I'm a recent mover. I moved literally right before the pandemic, so lucky me. In fact, I say that pretty sincerely. My partner and I moved up here from Los Angeles, and I don't know how we would survive through this. One of the main things that brought us to SLO was the environment here. Los Angeles is a desert of green spaces, and here I live at the base of Terrace Hill, so I have this beautiful hill that I can climb up every single day if I want to, and we have all the parkland, natural parkland all around. I've spoken with a lot of folks and am concerned about the potential of sprawl here in the Los Osos Valley. And coming from Los Angeles, I see the end result of sprawl. It's hideous. You don't want it. And having at certain times in my life lived in New York City, well, New York City can also be seen as a human cement wasteland. It was built very vertically and with purposeful green spaces everywhere, which is something Los Angeles did neither of those things. So Los Angeles is 2- and 3-story buildings. As far as the eye can see, it's a cement desert. So I know that currently there are some zoning that keeps SLO from going tall. And I understand that obviously we have beautiful natural vistas. I get to enjoy seeing the 2 Morro Peaks out my kitchen window. So I totally respect that we don't want to block off people's beautiful views. But at the same time, it does feel like there is room for taller apartment buildings, which if then built with environmental, with new environmental building codes and building methods, and that they could allow for denser population, especially around Cal Poly, where people, want to be able to live densely, but also it allows us to keep our city bikeable and walkable, which is honestly my other favorite thing. I'm right by the Jennifer Street Bridge. I can take a bike to downtown whenever I want. I love it. And I appreciate that the city is doing even more to make the town super bikeable. Like this town's already super bikeable compared to LA. So I appreciate all the efforts that was done before I moved here. Thank you all. Your bike planning has done great for this city dweller. I've also recently heard about a growing desire to dredge the Laguna Lake. And as it's been explained to me, it sounds like a really good idea. And so I don't know if it matters, but it seems like it's worth voicing support for dredging it, getting human refuse out of it and helping rehabilitate that body of water. And then on just a personal note, I would really like, and granted, we have so many bigger things than this to deal with, but I would love to address light pollution. I know that SLO technically qualifies as a dark skies city, and maybe it's because I live near the train station, but the train station has some of the brightest lights in the city, and they are on all night long, 24-hour, or all 365 days a year. And we know through studies that the bright lights of human habitation are depleting insect and bird populations. They're really harming all the nocturnal animals. And so when we have, we don't get trains at night in SLO, right? That's when they clean the trains. No trains come through town at night. So I don't really understand why the train station lights are on. And so I think in general, I'd love to see a greater conversation around dimming a lot of public light. I'm not saying we have to eliminate public lights, but I've been seeing a lot of interesting studies come out. I was reading one the other day that came out at MIT that streetlights don't actually reduce crime. They don't actually make us safer. They make us feel safer. It feels safer to walk through a lit area, but it doesn't have a proportionate impact on crime. And so I wonder if we are sacrificing the beauty of dark night skies and the beauty of insect and bird populations in order to have night lights on at night when most of us are sleeping anyway.
Well, thanks,
So-
Marshall. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good series of feedback. If there's comments you want us to record in sort of perpetuity, go ahead and type just a short summary of those up. I do want to respond to a couple as far as, as this relates to climate action. And I think there's always going to be a tension between, and I think we've already heard in this room, between, population growth and sprawl and density. And I think that's something that, we've heard those conversations at length in our community. And, one of the things that we're excited to learn more about, and just seeing some examples from other jurisdictions that are dealing with this are looking at what's called sort of missing middle type housing. So, there's already state law around accessory dwelling units to sort of allow more neighborhood density in a way that respects the character and honors the character and sort of style and look and feel of a neighborhood, but still allows for more affordable and accessible housing types. So it's just an interesting sort of development that's happening that we'll definitely want to keep tabs on. And then as far as the best container of sprawl we've found is our green belt in acquiring and managing our open space. And so that's definitely something that we see as a really critical climate action activity, because if you land unconverted is emissions avoided. Land unconverted is less sequestered carbon that enters the atmosphere. And also we're seeing sort of nationally and internationally, and this is just really interesting. And for people that haven't heard it before, it sounds sort of like science fiction, but we can actually manage our soils and our rangelands and other places to actually become healthier and more resilient to climate change, while also increasing its ability to pull carbon out of the atmosphere. So, we have some pilot projects right now that we're just initiating to understand, given our soil types and our climate here, like what the potential and capacity is for that. But that's something that I think we're really excited about and have a really good opportunity for SLO to be a leadership community in that space.
I'm just going to mention I was lowering Marshall's hand when he was speaking, and I might have lowered somebody else's hand. So if so, please raise your hand back up.
Maybe it was Alan. Alan's got his hand raised, I think. I think we'll go back to Alan. Marshall, is that a different question? I'll unmute Alan first, and then we'll come back to you if that's all right. Okay.
Oh, I think Alan is still muted.
Okay, I just wanted to address James Marshall's, and James Marshall, you have two first names, so I don't know if you're Marshall James or James Marshall. But anyway.
Marshall's my given name.
Okay, Marshall. Sorry. Anyway, I just wanted to say that there is a constant pressure on this community and everywhere else in California to build more housing. And we understand that. We understand that the housing crisis is here, and we have to address it. But one of the problems I have, and I might tell you ahead of time, I'm an architect, is that when I used to practice architecture, we didn't chop down all the trees on a piece of property before we put buildings on it. And what Marshall reminded me of is that there is an enormous amount of disruption to wildlife and refuges when we do a massive tree removal, which of course was done at Santos Ranch and other places. And it's done often with the excuse that, well, these are throwaway trees because they're eucalyptus or they're willows and they're growing along a riparian corridor and we don't really care about them. I think we should care about trees. I'm a tree hugger, and I think the city is bending over backwards to accommodate developers to the point where they think that they have to chop every tree down in order to make the property, their development affordable. And I think that is specious and it's wrong and it's working against climate adaptability.
Thanks, Alan. I smiled there because one of my relatives called my child a tree hugger, and he looked at them and said, "You say it like it's a bad thing," which I loved. I was very proud. All right, so thanks for that. Good conversation. I think, Marshall, did you have a follow-up or contribution? And
Yeah, one other thing that I would love, because I would love to maybe see if there is interest in doing a reforestation project in some of our larger parkland areas, like for Christmas, because I was stuck here. My partner and I hiked up High School Hill. I'm not sure exactly what that mountain range is called, but we noticed that up at the top, there is like a stand of evergreen trees that all seem relatively young and look like they've been purposely planted there and are being nurtured. And we thought like, oh, this is great. Like this ridge up here is probably great for them to keep planting evergreen trees. So I think I've just seen a lot of fallow land laying around that throughout this entire year has just laid open dirt to the sun, which is just awful. It's like the worst thing we could allow land to do. So I wonder if there's any thought on either if it's owned farmland and the idea is that at some point it will be farmed again, if there's any thought like, can we encourage the people to sow wildflower or wild grass or something that, I mean, they're going to have to churn up the earth when they replant anyway. So it seems like in the meantime that there could be carbon sequestration and earth regeneration going on there through the planting of wildflowers.
Yeah,
And
so
also,
I can,
if there's any interest in the public on doing a big volunteer reforestation project somewhere in our green spaces.
yeah, thanks, Marshall. That's a great contribution. You know, in our climate action plan, one of our focus areas is on natural solutions. I talked a little bit earlier about conservation of open space, and one of the other things we have in there is, you know, a commitment to plant 10,000 trees by 2035. And so right now we're figuring out how that happens. You know, we started with a grant from California and are working with EcoSlow and got 150 in this last year. But not surprisingly, planting even 150 trees in street tree wells is really complicated and time consuming. And it sounds like a small number, but it's actually a pretty big number when you're out there with your shovels and everything. But certainly, you know, it's not just street wells. There's plenty of opportunity in our open spaces for even, you know, some climate resilient oak species. And so we're working with Professor Ritter and forgetting the woman's name, but there's some professors at Cal Poly that are helping us think through this. And certainly, you know, trees and open space are going to need to be a major portion of any serious climate action agenda. Councilmember Marks, welcome. All right, are there any questions? And again, just a reminder for folks that are new to the room, you likely came in with your screen turned off. So if you want to turn it on and share your video with us, that's great. If not, that's fine too. And then if you want to leave comments for perpetuity, then go ahead and put it in the comment box. And if you'd like to ask a question, go ahead and raise your virtual hand or even your real hand if we can see you. All right, we have a real hand.
Right, I'm sending you the ask to unmute message. There you go.
Yeah, so you may have already covered this, but what do you think the most effective thing the city could do right now? Like say the top 1 or 2 projects. I mean, it seems to me that so much of what, if you look at everything in the climate action plan, implementing everything, it's a lot. Mm-hmm. We only have certain, you know, what is the most effective thing that the city could do right now?
Yeah, thanks for the great question. So actually to have a you know, high quality of life, zero carbon modern economy, it's actually at a high level, it's pretty easy. You have 100% renewable or carbon-free electricity, and then you switch everything, you know, you electrify everything, and then you take care of your open spaces and your natural resources, and then you're basically carbon neutral. Of course, as you noted in the climate action plan, it's substantially more complicated than that to get there. You know, we've already joined Central Coast Community Energy, so we're on a pathway to 100% renewable So that's great. We're already thinking about our new buildings using that renewable energy. So that's great. We have a lot of pilots that are sort of in place. We're trying to understand right now how we can make sure we manage our open spaces so they become more resilient to the impacts of climate change. How we can work with our regenerative agriculture partners to make sure that we can sequester carbon. So there's lots of things that are happening. But when we think about the spaces that we can have the biggest sort of leadership impact in and address our emissions the most, it's really around, I think, finding ways to take all the resources that are out there in the state and help people retrofit their homes to become more efficient and running on clean energy. I think it's around open space, conservation, preservation, trees. And then I think it's on transportation. So really, I think we've had some really good conversations earlier about the different uses of our transportation network, but it's really around, making sure that our active transportation plan is implemented, that folks have access to electric vehicles that want to, continue to drive in their cars. And so even that list of 3 things gets complicated one layer deep. But the good news is that, as we think about a 10-year runway to achieve our goal, it's really around, putting ourselves on a path to have that sort of impact over the next decade. And so I think really like the sort of, as we identified in the climate action plan, sort of foundational steps we want to take in the next 2 years in each of those spaces will set us on that path.
Thank you, Chris. And it looks like Alan has his hand raised. I'll send you the message. There, Alan, did you get that? There you go.
Yes, thank you, Jan, for joining us. Jan has begged the question, and I'm going to give her the answer. And that is that we need to protect our open space. One of the problems that's occurred in the last 12 months, if my calculations are correct, is that this city council has approved 3 annexations, one of which, Froome Ranch, encroaches into our permanent open space. I know it's a political decision, and I know that many of you are very fastidious about avoiding politics, as you well should be. But the problem is that we cannot encroach on our open space through annexations. We should not. It should be one of the things that the climate action plans specifies. The other part of the equation is that we do have obviously some controversy surrounding the recreationalizing of open space, putting in more hiking paths, bicycle paths, and so forth. And of course that works contrary to the preservation of wildlife. So, I think open space preservation is so critical, and maybe some annexations can be justified. But particularly in the case of Froome Ranch, I think it's very wrong that the council approved it. It had been disapproved over the last 20 years, and finally the council caves. And I think that's a climate action issue. We have to preserve open space.
Great, thank you, Alan. And thanks, Alan, and thanks for the question, Councilmember Marks. All right, just a reminder, if folks want to leave any comments for the record, please go ahead and put that in the chat box. And if you have any questions, go ahead or I guess at this point we have some time, some comments, feel free to raise your virtual or physical hands and we'll call on you.
Oh, got a question from Janine. Did it send you the message, Janine, to unmute you? Oh, hold on, Janine. I think it's delayed. There you go.
I was just going to affirm Alan Cooper's comment about Froome Ranch. That hasn't been started yet, and before it's started, that we really do step back and look at our water resources, look at the actual need. With the pandemic, that's taken 500,000. By the time they say in the next 3 weeks, there's going to be another 300,000 lives gone. Is there a need for Froome Ranch retirement community? Let's face it.
All right. Thanks, Janine.
Yep.
All right, any other questions? So just a couple of couple of reminders. We'll go ahead and put a link to the climate action plan, just if folks haven't had a chance to look at it yet. Again, there's a volume 1, which is sort of if you have 5 minutes and want to look through a digest summary, that's your place. If you have more time and you want to look through volume 2, that's your place. And if you have a lot of time, the technical appendices are where I really get the most joy out of. So feel free to take a look at those. All right, we'll go ahead and put it back to the floor. Are there any other questions or thoughts about our climate action? Any priorities you all would have beyond? All right, let me ask you to unmute here, council member.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just going to have to hop to another room, but this has been really interesting. It sounds just like the open space where I just was.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's see. I have to figure out how to do it.
Can I take a moment just to invite folks to another community forum we're having, community engagement around resilience slow, and that is on June 28th, and I'll put a link in the chat. And that didn't work. And it is going to be a good opportunity for folks to learn about the project and to learn about the importance of resiliency and looking at our vulnerabilities and how we can strategize about how to adapt to worsening impacts of climate change. So again, the date of this community engagement is on June 28th at 6 p.m. And as soon as I get the right link, I will put it in the chat.
Kelly, I can't hear you, Kelly.
We've got a question in the chat. It looks like it's from John McKenzie. Does the climate action plan try to be walkable centric where the major residential areas can? This could include dog parks and in some of the city parks.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question, John. One of the things that we have, one of our primary focus points is around transportation. And obviously on the one hand, it's active transportation. And on the other hand, it's helping people facilitate access to electric vehicles if they want to continue to use their vehicles either for regional trips or internally. And so the way that we think about active transportation is really achieving the general plan goal around 50% of trips occurring by walk, bike, or bus, but doing it on an accelerated timeline. So by 2030. And that's the same goal that's also in the active transportation plan. So we're sort of agnostic to how that happens, but certainly walkability, walkable centric neighborhoods and communities are going to be critical to allowing that to happen. So that's one of several ways that could happen. We hadn't included dog parks, but it's I like that idea. So we'll jot that down here.
Thank you. And it looks like Alan's got another question. Go ahead, Alan.
One of the complexities of City Hall and the bureaucracy there is that sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. And as you may well know, there is an active transportation plan that's going through approval processes. And if any of you sit down and give it a thorough reading, you will begin to appreciate John McKenzie's question, because there is very little in that plan that addresses walking. One of the cop-out explanations in that document is that they don't believe the city can afford to upgrade sidewalks that need upgrading, and they can't afford to put in sidewalks where they're needed. And I think that's unacceptable. I think that the active transportation plan should be a little less bike-centric and more walking-centric.
Thanks, Alan. That'd be, if you don't mind, that'd be a great comment to add to the chat so we can make sure we record that.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, well, oh, sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
I was just going to let you know I don't see any further questions in the chat and no hands raised yet. So just want to let you know.
Okay. Great. Well, I guess also if there's anything that anyone wants to know about the climate work we've done to date, or the resilient slow work that Teresa's leading, happy to answer any questions about that. But also any ideas you have, again, please put that in the chat box. Any questions you have, please feel free to ask them. And time check, Kelly, how much longer do we have here? Oh, muted.
Sorry, I'm muted on my headset, not on the Zoom.
problem.
Sorry, guys. It's 8:04 currently, so we have still a few more minutes.
Okay, great. I want to elevate something that Janine just put in the chat box. So it's an invitation to an upcoming Slow Climate Coalition meeting. So Slow Climate Coalition is a group of volunteers in the community that work on climate change related issues. And we have, I work as a staff liaison to that group, just to make sure that folks that are interested in climate action in the community can be aware of what's happening in the city, and vice versa for that matter. So go ahead and follow that link. And maybe Janine, if it's not too much to ask, if you also put a link to your all's organization's website so folks can visit that too, if that's useful for them.
Well, I'm going to also put in the chat the main page for the Resilient Slow Project. And again, there's the event on January 28th, but there's also an invitation on there for folks to submit stories of resilience. And we're looking for opportunities for people who have experienced an event, and it may be related to a wildfire or a flood, but it doesn't have to be. Some event that was a challenge, and their story about how they survived it and became resilient because of it, and perhaps because of opportunities to get to know their neighbors or in many, many different ways. And we're getting some stories submitted that are wonderful. We encourage you to submit those stories, and we'll be continuing to collect those stories as we go forward in the project and highlight those for future public engagement. And that link is in the chat.
Great, thank you. There's also a link in that on that website to our baseline conditions report, which is as much detail as you'll ever want and more around some of the climate change hazards we might be exposed to. So absolutely check it out. We have a couple of new folks in the room, so welcome, and feel free to ask any questions if you have them, or if you just want to leave a comment, please do feel free to put that in the chat box.
And we've got a few more minutes. It's 8:08 right now, everybody. Just time check. So if there's anything else. Oh.
So, Chris, is it possible that we can come back to the city and ask for them to revisit an idea or an option to have a citywide ordinance on takeout plastics?
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible, right? So I think that I think it just as I think it would be as long as it's couched in. Trying to think of the best way that that proposal could be well received. So I think understanding what our role is and what our regulatory role is in that relative to the IWMA or others, and then what legal capacity we have to do that, just as a first question is good, and then how that furthers goals.
Sure.
So I have some ideas on answers to those questions, but I think generally that would be a helpful way to start that conversation.
just
restart
that,
that conversation.
you know, this whole thing, how do I get this in the picture? The 3 boxes that came with last night's dinner go straight to landfill. For me, those boxes, that food didn't need to be in a plastic box that's going to last on Earth forever. That the purchase of that box shouldn't have happened. That they know they could get away with a cardboard box, even if it was, God forbid, that plastic lined or whatever. It's not going to be a plastic fossil fuel box that's going to last forever because it's not recyclable. It would save the owner, the restaurant owner, my angst to that I am not given an option to bring my own takeout box. I'm forced to take their box. So I should say, well, I'm not going to shop at your place unless you give me a recyclable box. So anyway, I would like to say, is the city open for that, as if we approach this, not in 6 months, but right now?
It's like any new ideas. You know, we have a full work program that we're scrambling to implement, and so it would just have to be a matter of it being a big enough council priority to deprioritize something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Janine. And I know I just with a couple of cheese enchiladas from our local shop around the corner brought 4 large cartons of styrofoam home, and it was surprising. So anyway, June, I just want to honor what June has put in the chat box, and it is really exciting. ACEEE, which is one of the largest energy, it's like the American Congress on Energy Efficiency, I think, identified us as the #1 small city in the US on climate initiatives. So that's, we're super proud of that. And I think it reflects all the passion of the community and all the good work that's been done.
Thank you. And just time check, it's 8:11, so we've got a few more minutes.
I have one more
Virtually.
thing. I attended the Integrated Waste Management Authority monthly meeting today. And it was brought up that in the February meeting, they will introduce that the polystyrene county ordinance will go into effect in April. So all the CSDs, all the county stores, rather cities, Paso Robles and Atascadero, that will be implicated in the polystyrene food. That's foodware boxes in polystyrene. So that will be potentially coming up April 9.
Okay.
Re-implemented. And that's a huge yay.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. Can you, let's keep in touch on that, because I want to make sure that that'd be great. Thanks, Janine. Councilmember Pease, welcome to our humble climate action room.
Good. How's it been going? Been busy in here?
Has been. It's been great. We've had some really good conversations, and
Good.
Do you have any questions or any ideas that you want to record?
No, I think that's an unfair advantage to have my comments weighed in there.
Right. Not intentional.
But interestingly, if I'm not interrupting anybody else, but I've just got onto the statewide committee. The League of California has these advisory bodies for what the cities are going to advocate for at the state level. And I applied to and was accepted to be one of the members of the Environmental Quality Committee. So, so we had our first meeting for the year for the legislative session today, and what we're going to focus on in solid waste and recycling is actually the top priority for that group. And then climate action, kind of resiliency, a lot of mitigation, coastal sea level rise kinds of concerns. And so it's very interesting. Glad to be a part of that.
Just as an aside there, we had our bi-monthly meeting with the California Green Cities, which is the staff level sort of self-organization of sort of self-organized group of leadership cities throughout California. And we were wondering about that specific group. So if you want to coordinate it all on that, let us know.
Yeah, I owe you an email to set up a
Okay.
coordination meeting to check in on that.
I look forward to it. Great.
Need to see that at the state level and feel like we have like a itty bitty little bit of a lever actually. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We've got about 1 more minute, everybody.
Well, so we don't get booted out here, just want to say in a minute here, please do feel free, or please do go back to the main room. And just want to say, Jane, I think it was nice meeting you for the first time, and great to see you again, June and Janine and Councilmember Pease. And thanks for all your great feedback and questions.
Definitely. Thank you, everybody. It's nice to
Awesome.
meet you. Thank you.
Thanks.